Hello and welcome to another live with Diane at Stretching by the Bay and Bounce Back from Back Pain. I will be initiating a new format today, shorter. If you cannot make it live for Q&A, please send me your questions. It turns out that lives are incredibly complicated to edit, at least currently for me with the software that I have. And the limited tech knowledge that I have. So these need to be much shorter so that I can leave the gems as evergreen content for you. And like I said, if you cannot make it live with me at noon Pacific time on Wednesdays, please feel free to send me your questions via the channel or via my website of the same name, stretchingbythebay.com. So thank you and welcome for visiting my channel. Welcome for being here. This live situation initially launched due to becoming a best-selling author last summer, at the end of last summer, July of 2024, as part of this anthology. And so my younger friends and clients had a lot of questions because now that HRT or hormone assistance to replace the estrogen and such that we lose at the pause or even before the actual pause has become more mainstream. Yay for that. It's also been watered down a bit since the journey I took, being one of those who wasn't missed by that incredibly flawed women's health initiative study of 2002 that spread so much misinformation about dangers of HRT. I'll let you know, Peter, about or Dr. Mary Claire, one of the other fabulous doctors who are addressing this regarding the details of that. But just as to say that the study was flawed and the presentation of results was flawed, and many people of my generation got missed for the supplemental hormones that help keep our brains, our bones, our muscles, our minds, our moods strong and resilient. So now that it's being done, it's sort of minimal symptom control rather than actual functional medicine. Which segues into the topic for today, which is functional medicine. So since I've decided that these will be short and sweet, and therefore watchable as evergreen and won't clog up when people try to see what new videos I've created for self-care. Yeah, so short and sweet. Functional medicine. So one of the ways to consider this, especially if you are anywhere close to the second half of life, or even in the first half and wise enough to look at the second half, is what do I want to be able to do when I'm 100 years old? What do I want to be able to do when I'm 90 years old, 80 years old, 70 years old? And so that's where functional comes in super handy. So in my opinion, if I am not being paid to abuse my body in some professional sport, paid really well, then I will be choosing activities that are conducive to the longevity of my joints, my muscles, and my mind, with minimal injuries, a maximal functional range of motion, and that kind of thing. So without, some of you may be into like various different zones and that sort of thing, which is fine. But for those who aren't, I'm not going there. But you should know by now that you need exercise in your life. You need to do some cardio. You need to do some strength training, interval training, such as high intensity interval training, aka HIIT, is still popular because it combines a lot of these things. You get a lot of bang for your buck in doing that. Another thing that has gained a lot of popularity lately is exercise snacks. Also a huge fan of that. As someone on the ADHD spectrum, I know that little bursts of activity help me be calm and focused, and they're also really good for bodies. So that works out well. They used to just think it was, good for schoolboys, but that's because they weren't really studying women for much of anything, were they? So anyhow, so bursts of activities are very systemically fortifying in so many ways. So I know there's a lot of encouragement to do things like pickleball, a more contained version of tennis and an interactive sport. That, like tennis and other sports where you swing it, I have a lot of potential for deceleration issues, and if you're constantly decelerating instead of following through with your full range of motion, your body will get used to that. So you need, if you fall in love with that sport, great. And apparently, it's really good for brains, and of course, interacting is good for us on so many levels. And I don't know if they started doing it indoors yet, but generally sports like that involve open sky and fresh air and, people, which is all good. Huge fan of that. Um, but if you choose an activity that has a truncated, a limited range of motion, you need to also choose an activity, choose practices that will restore your range of motion, and also help you prevent injury. And then for my professional athletes, they're very interested in easy for me to say, very interested in optimizing their range of motion, especially as it pertains to their sport. If you have a multi-million dollar contract, that is an incredibly wise choice to make. And, with that kind of money, you can hire people like me to help you restore at the end of, well, let's say it's in the NFL. Doesn't that stand for not for long? So at the end of your career, or throughout your career, and a wise athlete knows that you need to be stronger and have more range of motion than is required for your sport. That way, when you hit the end of the motion required for your sport, it's not the end of the motion. It's not a make or break situation, um, which is why I am such a huge fan and proponent and teacher for decades of active, isolated stretching. Super scientific way to painlessly and effectively optimize your range of motion so that you can do whatever you choose to do with that. I highly encourage some functional training in your program. But if you've fallen in love with pickleball or some other sport, just mitigate that. And for those of you who have chosen, God bless you, a profession such as dentistry, where I can't even go in and say, oh, well, raise your monitor and drop your keyboard down, and because your focus is somebody's mouth. That's not going to. You can change it with prism glasses. You can change it with the seat. You can change it with asking them to move their head around. But ultimately, you are focused on a very small target. So for those of you in vocations that involve compromising your bodies, there are easy ways to restore your bodies for your life at the end of your workday and throughout your week. Uh, And active isolated stretching is a golden ticket for that. We have practitioners all over the world. I'm in San Francisco. My mentor is in Florida. At Stretching USA, they have a list of some practitioners, or you can call them for a recommendation in your area. So let's see if we have fresh chat questions. Anyone with a question or request about what movement you would like me to lead you through today? Going once, going twice. Well, because it is easy to do small movements in front of the camera in a talking situation like this, and the camera quality is really not that great. I tend to go with torso movements and neck movements or shoulder movements. That is on my channel so many times. Here's another quick hack. I think in one of the lives, and if I had took it down for editing, hopefully I will put it back up, for hip flexors, because hip flexors are a big conversation for anyone who spends their time sitting, like for work. So, but a quick, easy hack, rather than learning the active isolated stretching hip flexor and quad stretches, which I highly encourage you to do, please, is the simple act of walking backwards. So I may fall out of the camera while I put myself back in the camera, but I am going to go to the other end of the room where you stand a chance of seeing me. A chance, keyword a chance. Okay, let me flip that up a little bit. Where's my camera crew? Okay, so when you're seated, your hips are in this position, and your hip flexors, some of which go from your lumbar spine to the here, are in a shortened position. This is the biggest, strongest bone in your body. So when you go to stand up, do you think it's going to pull this bone out of place? Occasionally. Or do you think it's going to pull your lumbar vertebrae out of place? Yeah, more likely. Plus the psoas is attached to all of the discs. So when you go to stand up fully. In fact, give your butt a little extra squeeze at the top. And then I'm going to start here, so I have a little room. Walk backwards. Make sure it's safe. I see what's behind me. Walking backwards, especially if you do it from the hip. If you're walking backwards, see how that is? I'm walking backwards using my butt. And what's happening is the glutes are extensors, which is opposite of flexors. And so the action of engaging your hip extensors helps to release your hip flexors. It's based on the same principles of active isolated stretching proper, which is utilizing the action of one muscle inhibits the opposite action of the opposing muscle. Sherrington's law. He won the Nobel Prize for this almost 100 years ago. He was studying eyeballs. I know I've said this a million times. You can literally not look left and right out of the same eyeball at the same time. Otherwise, you'd be doing that cartoon character boing, boing, thing, right? So if you're looking one way, the muscles that would have you look the other way are temporarily inhibited from firing. This works for all the voluntary muscles. I mean, unless you're having a spasm or a cramp or severely deprived of magnesium or dehydrated or something like that. Those are bad situations where everything fires at once, but or cerebral. But anyhow, so in general, in in a fairly healthy functional body, when you are utilizing the muscles that perform one action, the muscles that perform the opposite action are inhibited from firing. Overusing the psoas in core training is one of my little soapboxes. Email me if you would like a free PDF um, describing this issue and encouraging other exercises that are so much better for you and your core, because it's so ironic that people do core exercises to prevent back pain or reverse back pain, and then they wind up often getting taught by so many trainers exercises that are actually really hard on the lumbar region and wonder why they don't get better. So feel free to hit me up for the PDF on that. Doing some deep work on my channel. Welcome for being here. Comments are open on most of my videos now that I know how to find them. Would love to engage with you there or here. Again, thanks for joining me today.